Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you lost a deal last quarter, it wasn't because your competitor was better. It was because they saw the movement before you did. Think about that for a second. You did not lose because your message was off. You did not lose because your ICP was wrong. You lost because you were blind to momentum. And in B2B, the fastest reader of momentum always wins. Always. And trust me when I say this, because I learned this the hard way. We spent weeks nurturing an account, perfect fit, ideal persona, only to discover a competitor closed it sooner. 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. Not because their deck was better, but because they detected a leadership shift and jumped before the organization fully realized they were in buying mode. They weren't selling, they were actually sensing. In the next few minutes, I'll give you a system that lets you predict which accounts will move in the next 30, 60, 90 days, long before intent tools, CRMs, or your sales team notices anything. And by the end of anti-persona series, you won't just target accounts, you will forecast them. You'll operate like the top 1% of marketers, the ones who generate pipeline by reading patterns the rest of the industry can't see. And here is the question nobody in B2B ever asks. What actually causes a company to start buying? Not intent, not persona, not content downloads, movement. Organizational movement, and movement is invisible unless you know how to map it. So here is my challenge to you, right? For the next 20 minutes, forget everything you know about targeting, forget personas, forget ICP checkboxes, forget fit, because none of that predicts who will buy. Only momentum does, and once you learn how to map momentum, you'll start seeing deals months before anyone else does. Let me show you how. Let me say something most marketers will never accept. Fit doesn't create pipeline. Movement does. And the moment you internalize this, your entire GTM worldview changes. Think about your last quarter, right? How many perfect fit accounts did nothing? They matched your ICP, they matched your persona, they matched your vertical, sub-vertical, use cases, but they didn't match your timeline. That's the mismatch killing your pipeline. The 99% keep asking, does this account fit our ICP? The top 1% will ask, is this account accelerating? And the one difference is why the 99% chase leads while the 1% catch revenue. Here is the blind spot, right? Companies don't buy because they fit a category. They buy because something is moving inside their world. A risk increased, a priority shifted, a leader arrived, a tool broke, a board demanded urgency. Movement creates demand, not personas. ICP is still a photo, right? Movement is a live feed, and you can't win deals with still photos in a moving world. The mistake marketers make isn't bad targeting, it is static targeting. The world changes every 18 days. Your ICP was built 18 months ago. Of course you are misaligned. Of course you are chasing ghosts. But here is the good news. Once you start reading movement, you stop being a marketer and you become an accelerator. Right? This episode will show you how to read that movement better than anyone in your category. The first step is to understand the 3 layers of momentum that signal when a company is about to buy, long before they raise their hand. Let's break them down. If movement is what creates demand, then the real question becomes, how do you actually see movement? Not in retrospect, not in a post-mortem, but while it's happening. That's what the momentum mapping system is built for. And I have spoken about these 3 layers in this channel earlier, and I want to introduce them again. There are 3 layers of momentum you need to track. External triggers, what happens to the company. Internal signals, what happens inside the company. And behavioral micro signals, how they start behaving before they buy. Most marketers barely see the first, ignore the second, and are blind to the third. External triggers are events that hit the company from the outside and force it to move. They don't care about your funnel, your content, or your quarter. They change the buyer's world overnight. And I want to give a few examples, right? A new regulation drops in their industry, they announce a funding round or IPO intent, or competitor gets acquired, there is a major security breach that hits the sector, right? Their biggest customer churns. These events don't create interest, they create pressure. And here is the insane part, right? Most teams see these headlines, then they go right back to their scheduled content calendar. That's like ignoring an earthquake because your weather app says it's sunny. Internal signals, on the other hand, are changes inside the organization that tell you whether that external pressure is actually turning into action. This is where the real deal begins. And it could be things like a new CFO, CIO, or CISO, CTO, CO coming in with a mandate, a flurry of job posting in your function, whether it's data or AI, security, sales, marketing, whatever that is, right? Internal teams merging or spinning up new teams, right? RFP task force forming, a sudden wave of vendor evaluation or tool migration. These are not nice to know. These are pre-buying choreography, right? External triggers say they should care about this now. Internal signals say they actually doing something about it. If you don't see internal movement, you are yelling into a building where no one has stood up yet. And then there is the third layer, the one almost nobody tracks deliberately, behavioral micro signal. This is where buying motion first becomes visible in tiny, almost invisible ways. And here is what looks like, right? Anonymous repeat visits from the same corporate IP, sudden spike in technical documentation views, not just blogs, multiple people from the same company hitting your site within days, a prospect rewatching a case study or webinar, right? Very specific implementation level questions in early calls, a recruiter posting for roles that align with your solution's operating model, right? None of these on their own scream ready to buy, but together they are motion in the dark. The 99% wait for explicit intent, right? Forms, demos, inbound hand raisers. The top 1% watch these micro signals and say this account is heating up and we have to move now. That's the difference between chasing RFPs and shaping them. So when you put it all together, external triggers tell you where the pressure is building, internal signals tell you where and who is mobilizing around it, and behavioral micro signals tell you when the energy is peaking. Momentum mapping is simply the art of stitching these three into a single view so you can act with scary accuracy, right? And in the next part, I'll show you exactly how to turn these signals into momentum score that lets you forecast deals like physics, not hope. Now that you understand the three layers of momentum, here's the part nobody shares, how to quantify it, right? Because intuition closes small deals, score-based momentum closes the big one, right? And momentum score is equal to external trigger weightage plus internal plus micro signal velocity. This number tells you how close an account is to entering buying mode. Not fit to ICP, not persona match, buying pressure. Actual measurable buying pressure. Start with the pressure that hit the company from the outside, right? Funding that's, let's say, +3, regulation change +4, breach in the sector, maybe it's more important and more time sensitive, let's say +5. The stronger the external shock, the higher the weight. External triggers create urgency without your involvement. The 99% wait for intent. The top 1% see pressure building and move while everyone else waits for a form fill. Now let's look at internal signals, right? Internal signals convert pressure into organizational motion. Now let's talk about a new CFO coming in and you give a score, let's say plus 3 point, or new CIO or CTO plus 4, and there are 10, let's say there's a flurry of open positions in a solution or in an industry where you are selling, that could be plus 2, or if there is a migration for a tool, you could put it plus 3. So you see that internal signals tell you where the company is rearranging its operating model, right? And every time a company rearranges its operating model, they spend money. This is the part your ICP cannot and will never capture. Micro signals are subtle on their own, right? The power comes from how quickly they appear. That's velocity. 3 signals in 14 days or 7 signals in 3 weeks. I don't know, 12 signals in 2 weeks. But when the velocity spikes, buying intent doesn't increase, buying becomes inevitable. Add these 3 layers and you get the most accurate GTM predictor you will ever use, right? 15 to 20 points, you are in a hot zone, right? And 10 to 15 maybe warning zone, and 0 to 10 maybe you are in a cold zone. So in the hot zone, outreach feels psychic, right? In the cold zone, outreach feels desperate. And this is what I would say. I would strongly encourage you to score your TAL accounts, named accounts, must-have accounts, for your solution, for the services that you are selling, and prioritize on the accounts that enter the hot zone, right? And you would see that most of the action will happen in these top accounts that have entered the hot zone. That's the power of reading momentum like physics. Your momentum score tells you who is heating up, and the momentum timeline tells you when to strike, right? And timing, not messaging, is what separates maybe later from a closed one. Every account that enters buying motion moves through 3 predictable phases. Let's call the first phase ignition with 0 to 14 days, then acceleration 15 to 30 days, and breakpoint 30 to 90 days. This is revenue physics, and once you see it, you will never waste time on dead accounts again. And ignition is when movement first appears, weak, inconsistent, unorganized. A new CFO joins, a compliance deadline surfaces, a team lead mentions a tooling gap. Nothing is official, but you can feel the static in the air. The mistake most marketers ignore these early sparks because they look small. The top 1% use ignition to enter the conversation lightly, send point of view assets, shares strategic insights, run thought leadership ads, prime the problem. They don't pitch. You warm the ground, right? And then you look at how the acceleration works, right? This is when the internal signals start to cluster. Multiple roles get opened up, teams meet to define scope, leaders ask for numbers, budget starts shifting. The organization moves from awareness to urgency. This is the moment to drop case studies, technical webinars, ROI frameworks, proof assets. You're not selling, you're kind of building the inevitability. Breakpoint is when buying motion peaks. Leadership alignment is solidified, budget is approved, requirements are defined. If you reach them here, the deal is already 30% decided in their mind, right? This is when the top 1% marketers go direct and precise, personalized outbound, executive to executive notes, ABM landing pages, direct ROI narratives. You are no longer trying to generate demand, you are catching a wave that was already building. And let me tell you the uncomfortable truth, right? Most marketers miss 70% of real buying cycles, not because buyers hide, but because marketers don't know where to look. You were trained to look for personas, not patterns. You were trained to chase fit, not movement. You were trained to optimize touch points, not timeline. So of course you didn't see the deal forming, you were staring at the wrong layer of reality. The 99% will say they are not engaging with our content, maybe later. The top 1% say they just opened 2 engineering roles and their CFO left. Move now. One group waits for permission, The other reads momentum like scientists. The real blind spot isn't effort, it's system design, right? Your pipeline failed not because your ads were bad, but because your worldview was static. A static ICP, a static persona, a static nurturing sequence. And that's a static GTM. A static GTM loses every single time in dynamic market. The good news, the blind spot is fixable. In the final section, I'll show you how to build a live, continuously updating anti-persona system that reads momentum in real time and tells you exactly when to strike, and it will change the way you sell forever. You know the momentum layers, you know the momentum score, you know the momentum timeline, right? And here is what brings it all together: a live anti-persona system that updates every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right? Not every year. Anti-persona doesn't replace your ICP, it replaces everything you built on top of it. Fake empathy maps, job titles, demographic profiles, static assumptions, all of that becomes irrelevant the moment the company changes direction. Anti-persona reads the direction in real time. And the step number 1 is to start with quarterly, monthly priorities, not the persona, board letters, earning calls, product announcement. What's the company actually trying to solve this quarter? That's your foundation. The step number 2 is, are they expanding, defending, or freezing? Your messaging and outreach must change based on the posture. And posture predicts spend far more than persona ever will. Right? The third step is mapping the vendor terrain who is already inside the account. Are you replacing, coexisting, or surrounding? Your GTM motion depends on understanding the political terrain, not job titles. The step number 4 is, are they blind? Are they exploring solutions, right? Or have they already defined their requirements, right? Deals don't die in demos, they die in governance, right? Who can veto, what compliance rules apply, what security frameworks block you. Anti-persona surfaces these landmines before you step on them. When you combine priority map, investment posture, vendor terrain, maturity ladder, and governance, you get the buyer operating context, a living document that updates let's say every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right? And makes your GTM feel predictive, not reactive. Persona tells you who your buyer is. Anti-persona tells you how they move. And the moment you learn to read movement, you stop being a marketer and you become a market operator, part of top 1%. Until next time, cheers.